You see, she generates it now.
Oh, charming.
Well, no, I think it's really cool. We don't really get furniture. So, but
Good morning, everyone. Probably need to turn this off. Yes, good morning, everyone. My clock's ticked over 9, but just like to welcome everyone to the reconvening of the hearings for the draft Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. We're here in this lovely room in Waimakariri, and I'm looking forward to another good day. So we'll kick off with the karakia as per our lead by Victoria. Thank you.
Good morning. Whakataka taho, kiti uru, whakataka taho, kia mā, kina, kiuta, kia mā, whakataka ki tai, e pia ki ana te kura, I tia, I hokaka, he hohu, te he,
We don't have any apologies for today, so just record that. There was a yes, I'm a novice at these council meetings.
I'm watching you.
And we do have a declaration of interest that's on the Greater Christchurch website. One thing that I wanted to just acknowledge is thank the officers for getting addendum 1 to us overnight for the town. Addendum 1 is the updated map set describing changes made from the draft plan to what's being recommended by the officers. We'll formally introduce that through the agenda on Thursday, but just want to acknowledge the staff for getting that to us and probably getting later in the day, getting a copy of that. And a hard copy would be great, so thank you very much. Now, we're underway. Seems to item 3, Kathy. Is there anything to do there?
No.
Sports? No. Okay. So we can get underway. Holly, are you here? We'll just get started. Thank you. We have read your submissions. So, and you have 15 minutes, I think. So just make the most of that and we'll ask questions at the end. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Holly Luzak. I am representing Mr. Henry Mackay and his submission on the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. I have completed a Bachelor of Science, majoring in Geography with emphasis on Resource Management and Human Geography. I have also recently become an Associate Member of NZPI and we work towards full membership over the coming years. I'm employed by Elliott Sinclair as a Resource Management Planner and have worked for Elliott Sinclair for the last 15 months. Prior to being employed by Elliott Sinclair, I gained work experience at Christchurch City Council as a duty planner, as well as preparing resource consent applications at My Career Homes. In total, I have approximately 4 years of resource management and planning experience. To summarise a few of the points in Mr. Mackay's submission, the main points presented were in relation to Map A under the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, needing to be updated and reflected to what is shown within the future development strategies. In respect of Mr. Mackay's submission, the Waimakariri 2048 District Development Strategy shows a submission site within a future development area, whereas map A does not reflect this. The creation of a significance criteria is needed that recognises that not all land that is rezoned will be developed within a timely manner. There needs to be scope for active development of land, as well as being able to provide greater flexibility and accuracy around development capability. Within Mr Mackay's submission, he agrees with the focuses of opportunities 1 through 6 listed within the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. These consist of the protection of historic heritage, managing risks to people and communities, protection of the natural environment, enablement of affordable housing, providing space for the economy to grow, and prioritising sustainable transport choices. A few of the key points within the officer's Section 42A report. Within the report, it is summarised that most submission points do not support the greenfield approach in the draft spatial plan, noting that the draft spatial plan does not spatially identify greenfield areas on maps 2 and 14. Several submissions, as highlighted, consider that map 14 did not spatially identify the broad locations in which development capacity will be provided over the long term and future urban areas. This point, highlighted within the report, links back to the concerns in Mr Mackay's submission, where a discrepancy is seen between the development areas in the Waimakariri 2048 District Development Strategy compared to what is or isn't shown in Map A. Concluded within the officer's report, submitters called for a significance criteria to be developed as per clause 3.83 of the National Policy Statement for Urban Development. Submitters considered that without identifying preferred locations for greenfield growth in the medium and longer term, or providing the significance criteria, there is least assurance for the development sector that any future residential development would support the desired pattern of growth and outlined in the draft spatial plan. Recommendations by the officers in the Section 42A report were to amend page 69 of the draft spatial plan to outline identifying broader locations for residential development, which should be guided by the relevant spatial strategy, including the 6th opportunity previously mentioned. The officer's report does not recommend any changes to the draft spatial plan based on submissions against the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, which does include Mr Mackay's submission. In terms of Mr Mackay's submission, he does not support this statement as a high level of assessment in terms of the feasibility for residential development has been carried out at his submission site, which shows it is well suited for residential development. Within the report, it was recommended to amend maps 2 and 14 to reflect resultant changes from private plan changes and district plan reviews. The officer's comments in the Section 42A report are in general agreement with Mr Mackay's submission regarding the relevant maps needing to reflect district plan changes, private plan changes and rezonings. It is also acknowledged, whilst no changes to the draft spatial plan are recommended based on specific submission points, it has been considered that the draft spatial plan needs to ensure the requirements of the future development strategy under the NPS for urban development delivers on national direction. Just a matter for the panel to consider, in light of the New Zealand election that has just taken place, and National leading the government for the next 3 years. In May 2023, the National Party released its Going for Housing Growth Plan as part of the election campaign. This highlights 3 key action points, one of which includes councils required in major towns and cities to zone land for 30 years worth of housing demand. It is also proposed within their growth plan that there be a focus on targeted funds for future greenfield developments, which will be promoted to contribute towards the housing supply shortage. So just to conclude, based on the above, as part of Mr Mackay's submission, it is viewed that changes need to be made for the draft spatial plan to align with the Waimakariri 2048 district development strategy. I am now happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Holly. Questions?
Yeah. So just to confirm, Mackay has made a submission to the current district plan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Grant?
Just seeking clarification, you refer to map A. And I just, the spatial plan has map numbers 1 through 14 or more.
Sorry, but yeah, so that will be maps to 14.
So A is actually 2 all through to
Sorry, just to follow on that, Grant. The submission actually talks about map A of the Canterbury RPS is in 1.3.1. So is that what was being referred to, Holly?
No, that should not be in there.
Okay,
No.
so you're really focusing on map 1, 2 and 14.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question then on your main submission.
Mhm.
On page 4 of that item 1.4.1. You're suggesting that submitters generally in support of higher density, but acknowledge there are difficulties identified by FENS in building closer to more densely. I wonder if you could just highlight what FENS was saying in respect to that, what the concern is.
I don't think I have that on me, but I can elaborate that if needed.
Okay. And the other question on your main submission, 1.3.6 refers to the issue of restoring and enhancing the natural environment. And the suggestion is in your submission that those sort of issues can be dealt with under outlined development plans. What's your thoughts on how that gets incorporated into an outlined development plan with respect to the six areas that we're talking about?
So I think as part of allied development plans that I've seen previously, you can have certain conditions and requirements that developers are required to meet and comply with. And I think generally when they can't meet certain conditions, then it sometimes falls into non-compliant statuses under the relevant district plan. So then it's as part of that non-compliance, then it's assessed as part of their subdivision residential development proposal. So generally there are requirements listed, outlined under each relevant outline development plan that needs to be adhered to. And then if not, it normally kicks into non-compliant statuses under the relevant district plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, thank you very much for your presentation,
Thank you.
Holly.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you, Mr. Mackay. The time, and the Romney reports to at 9:30.
Yes, not really just yet.
Yes. We'll play quietly on your devices. You're right.
What? So. So that's. We've got the. You think they've got. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. It's passive. Yeah, you side myself. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the same.
Yeah. It's off. That's my own.
So it's wrong. Health.
Traveling.
No, I do the shopping. And whatever the change, at least every 2 weeks. With chips. Salad. McCartney's lunches. There's always a slice of cheese. Seconds. She was moving the furniture. She's getting a little smoky.
I should take you closer.
So you're asking my
Because, you know, it's one thing daughters will be, it's always. So I'm expecting a brand new app. Next time I see classes.
That's
Last year there was
Worry that people were.
last year there was one, it wasn't something that it was just really interesting. We wanted to do that and achieve all it was so good. Talked about these cats. We read it, we just.
I'm actually the only one.
That with
Now, it's not a tie. Yeah.
And they read the thesis as well. We had like.
Yeah, it's quite.
So they want to change. They was going. But we had a question. Because they were like, they asked us, we had a representative for MDRS, like, what do you think three like material effects will be?
I think
that's not bad. Last year, just built. Yes, it doesn't. That's good, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
recent.
everyone can sort of see. And it's interesting that this is new.
Yes, let's say that's one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I said to him.
I've had it for 13 years.
Hey.
This is gonna make it like that.
Which you did all.
Different legislation.
I quite like that.
Sounds like. Yeah.
The one I think. She didn't. There's sort of. Highlights. Big readings.
It's a shame. It's a shame we just had so long because it's trying to just.
So I have to log the.
The framework of plan design, there's like.
Oh, no, I'll go.
Just strict. Someone had to take down. They went through all the. Just, yeah. That's God's knows.
It's the same as we put in.
It's not like.
Trying to build it.
Well, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, where it's essentially.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, like 2 times after. You know, it was like.
But from my experience, we had a meeting.
Actually, to the kids, sorry. I couldn't get it on the bus. People seem to.
Well, that's, yeah, there is a little mistake. That's how it's.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Linda. Thanks for attending our hearing. And we look forward to, we've read your submission and we look forward to you highlighting the key matters. 15 minutes, so we'll just get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning. And first of all, my apologies. I didn't care for you for 1 minute. You'd be running early this early in the day. So I was thinking this would be cheap.
You're right on time, so.
Yeah. So obviously you had my submission, and I've just clarified for you that I'm Linda Murchison. I'm the Environment and Planning Manager for New Zealand Pork. I have a PhD in Environmental Policy and Planning and full membership of the New Zealand Planning Institute, and have worked in the industry for over 20 years, including as a district planner for Selwyn District Council, principal planning consent advisor for Environment Canterbury, and an environmental planning lead for Te Ruru and Waimakariri. So as well as private practice. I'm also an adjunct lecturer at Lincoln University, where I lecture in environmental resource management planning and in agriculture. So I just really wanted to, so you understand my professional background in terms of the context of the submission. So you had the submission from New Zealand Pork, and the things that I just wanted to highlight, obviously just making sure that everyone understands that New Zealand Pork is the New Zealand Pork Industry Board, so we're a statutory agency, but like Beef and Lamb with Dairy NZ, and we are funded by levies paid by commercial pig farmers. So as the submission outlines, pig farming is already an important part of the New Zealand economy, and because pigs are monogastrics, not ruminantal animals, we believe that it will play an even bigger part in the New Zealand economy going forward, because we can produce high quality animal protein with very low greenhouse gas emissions or a very low carbon footprint. The reason we're here in a spatial plan for Greater Christchurch is, of course, because pig farm, Christchurch Canterbury is the pig farming capital of New Zealand. Over 63% of commercial pig farms are in Canterbury, and of those, 15 are located within the Greater Christchurch area, with another 4 hard on the boundary. So on top of that, pig farming, all farming is food supply, and I guess when we looked at this draft strategy and we went, this is great, but the most fundamental part of urban growth is your food supply. If you don't have your food supply, then you have anarchy, you can't have anything. And I guess over the last 30 years in RMA, we have neglected rural land use planning generally, and food supply production in particular. It's just been, rural land has just been that thing that sits there until urban growth occurs. And I think we're at the stage now where we have to really think very carefully about what we are doing to our food supply. Farming tends to be understood for its economic value in the economy, our major export earner, and it is, but it is also our domestic food supply. That really hits home to me with pork, because we don't export pork. New Zealand pork is domestic only. We don't import pork for biosecurity reasons, other than some cured ham and bacon. So if you don't provide for pig farming, you don't provide for the domestic supply, you don't provide for pork as a food source in New Zealand. That's just one example. Every other sector, I think, could tell a similar story. So consequently, we asked for 2 things in the submission. One around greater recognition of the impact of urban growth and reverse sensitivity effects, and the submission gave 2 current examples of reverse sensitivity effects that we're currently dealing with on an ongoing basis, one in Selwyn and one in Waimakariri, to illustrate the point that these are real. And it also asks for the spatial strategy, if it's going to cover Greater Christchurch, including the rural area, to actually include some spatial planning for the rural area and rural land uses. Now, the Section 42A report has picked up on these points, which is really good, because this is a bit of a new field. I don't think these arguments have been presented much in RMA planning for a long time, and has made some recommendations to include a new direction 5.4 that recognises the potential impact of urban growth and climate reduction activities, including the ability to expand and change, and an associated explanation. And I agree with that recommendation as appropriate. So that's on pages 94 to 96 of the Section 42A report. However, I would also recommend that the spatial plan explicitly recognises and seeks to avoid all urban or rural lifestyle development in areas which are likely to result in reverse sensitivity effects with rural land uses.
So yes, the section 42A reports sort of picked up the whole economic role of rural land use and planning, but it hasn't really dealt with, in my view, hard enough the issue of review sensitivity. In the New Zealand Port submission, we requested a new point 3.6 in part 1, opportunity 3, which read avoid urban growth and rural lifestyle development in areas that cause or exacerbate review sensitivity effects with rural land uses. Now that would sit under the point to protect highly productive land. If you wanted to turn that round to the positive, you could quite easily turn it into, protect primary production activities and other rural land uses from review sensitivity effects, but some wording to that effect. Opportunity 3 is all about the things in the environment you're going to protect as part of urban growth and development. So in my view, it's sort of appropriate that it sits in there. And that's about all I've got to say. So if you concern.
Yeah, I see if the panel's got some questions. Linda?
Thanks for your submission. It was really interesting, and yeah, I found a lot of your points in terms of the pressures on urban growth on the one hand and expansion on the other. And yeah, thanks for that reference to the section 42A report. You were calling on your original submission, page 25, regarding 7.7. Acknowledge for these rural activities in the pork industry, for example, to expand or change in the lower emissions is also really important. I suppose this is a bit of a dilemma. If you deal with the urban growth, you consider any constraints on its expansion. And then in terms of the rules, I suppose I'm thinking in terms of the rules or the planning requirements to say, well, what is the spatial difference or distance between where urban stops and where rural activity can expand? What is the difference between? Because it's expansion of one, expansion of the other, and in which direction, and so those proximity issues to avoid the reverse sensitivity in both aspects is important, I suppose. Do you see that as something that would need to be dealt with at another level, more in terms of district planning rules about that, or something, or is it something that the regional policy statement, for example, might need to be address those sort of issues?
Yes, and that of course is land use planning. That is the nub of our profession. But yes, I think to my mind, a document like this would be sending the signals. It would be identifying more explicitly those very issues. And I think your regional policy statement, which all does, and your district plans in particular are the vehicles where you hone that in more specifically to your district. And as New Zealand said in their submission, and I agree, the fundamental approach in this spatial strategy to urban growth is one that the organisation supports, and I agree is good land use planning, the focus on high density, the use of green belts, those sorts of things. And when we talk about review sensitivity, it is largely from rural lifestyle, I guess, and it was raised in the submission, the issue that our challenge back to all the partners is we would have expected that pattern of urban growth laid out in the draft strategy to be being reflected and mirrored in the district plans. And we're quite surprised and a little perplexed when the proposed Waimakariri district plan came out, rezoning a third of the rural land to rural lifestyle, including 5 commercial periods. And so, yeah.
Okay. Just coming to a question. That's a question I'm wondering if we could ask our officers to look at in terms of the reverse sensitivity issues, not only just the pork industry, but I know that the poultry industry also have restrictions in terms of sensitivity. And I know that Environment Canterbury, in terms of consideration of the regional policy statement, waste disposal, dust and odour are also key questions that document will look at in the future. But I'm just wondering how that could fit in with that.
Grant, I think that would be useful for the panel because you look at the area, the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan covers, it includes a lot of rural areas. It's focused on urban growth, but if you're looking at the spatial planning within the area, what Hawk Industries highlighted is that it's not really covered the rural activities, particularly around food supply and local food supply. Within that area supporting in the urban, the growing urban areas seems to be, to me, quite strategic and spatially important. But Grant, would you like to have a go at framing a question we could record for officers so Kathy can capture that?
Question would be for would council officers review their comment on page 96 of the section 42A. The last paragraph in clause C. Clause C of their recommendation to consider reverse sensitivity issues generally that covers rural and urban interface and issues related to odour or other matters that might arise from them.
Maybe in the middle there, Kathy, because it's to ask whether the spatial plan should cover matters of reverse sensitivity and particularly around food production within the greater spatial plan area. This is,
yes, it's
a planning framework question. How does this? It's a key planning issue. It's not only protecting the soils and the land for production, but it's actually ensuring that those activities recognised and areas that aren't for urban growth, I think is another for me.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that would be good. I kind of also picked up your issue about the value chain and the association of the pork industry and its proximity to urban in terms of bio waste, those sort of things. So that's, yeah.
I'm just really interested in the low carbon output too. So I think what we're doing, Linda, is we're creating the questions as we go for the staff to come back formally with. So, you know, we're framing those up as we go. So it's useful. But I think, and we'll double check. I'll double check and make sure we've got that captured really well. It's it's a important question. But I think, Nicole, you had a question, but Robbie has first.
Well, I'm following on from Grant, really. Are you able to supply us anything with regard to mitigation, in particular on those reverse sensitivities, and particular odour? Because afterwards you can smell for miles.
There certainly is best practice, but I think the thing to understand with reverse sensitivity is the activity is not necessarily non-compliant and it's not necessarily unreasonable. It's often the perception. So in the two examples that I highlighted in the submission, and the example in Selwyn, the Environment Canterbury received over 100 complaints of odour from a rural lifestyle resident within 12 months. They investigated every single complaint, went out on site with their calibrated noses, and in all but one instance said there was no issue. The odour was not objectionable or offensive, the farm was compliant, but the complaints still happened. In the Waimakariri example, the complainant has a no complaints covenant over their property, yet they still complained. And again, multiple complaints investigated by Environment Canterbury found that in this stage that case was Piggy Effluent, compliant with the regional rules in all cases, yet the complaints still happened and escalated to leaflets and mailboxes urging other people to complain. I can tell you since writing the submission that farmer has enforced the no complaints covenant successfully in the High Court. It cost him a fortune, and I'm sure the complainant is not at all happy with the result. So it's not necessarily that these effects, that these activities are having bad effects. It is that they are different from what people are expecting when they come out. They're expecting a residential, urban residential amenity, and not, they're moving into a rural area. So you can, I guess it's a very long-winded way of saying to you, councillor, that you can have, you can be totally compliant and have all the mitigation in the world. That doesn't necessarily prevent you from reverse sensitivity. And, you know, Christchurch Airport have been doggedly determined to protect themselves for 30 years from reverse sensitivity, and, you know, you can understand why. And I guess the primary sector is now looking to do the same thing.
Thank you, Linda. Nicole?
You were talking about planning in the rural areas, and do you have some ideas of sort of zones or rural zones that you would be thinking about, sort of more to cater to the activities that you're talking about and the potential reverse sensitivity effects?
I'm not sure I'm quite in the same headspace as you yet in that question, because it's, these activities are zoned rural, but it's when the rezoning happens.
Okay, so you're not talking about having more specific zoning requirements within the rural areas, looking at maybe having a state. I'm more thinking, you know, comparing to urban, you would have sort of more stacked between like industrial areas and such, like you'd have, you know, different reverse sensitivity effects allowed in certain areas and not, and you're not asking for that really for the rural.
No, what we are, no, I'm sorry, I'm not you now.
Sorry, it's framing very well. I was trying to
That is better. We just need to make sure we're both in the same space.
Yeah.
No, the issue that we're dealing with is when councils rezone.
Okay.
Rezone leads to urban or usually largely rural lifestyle,
Yeah.
for the reverse sensitivity is often the main one. Thinking about some direction in the spatial plan about thinking about where and how you do that, and in all the things you think about as a planning authority when you go to rezone, make sure that on that radar is existing rural land uses that might then be subject to reverse sensitivity effects, and also primary production and food supply. So the spatial plan has got some really cool stuff in it about carbon emissions and transport and getting people out of cars. Well, we kind of don't achieve that if we push all the food production to miles out of nowhere, and people then has to be trucked further and further into the city. So it's about, when we're thinking about all of these things, make sure we don't forget the necessity to have a food supply in close proximity, and to enable that food production to occur. It needs to be, I guess, to sum it up, needs to be factored into urban planning, in my opinion.
Very good explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your attendance, Linda. I'm just making a comment that there've been quite a lot of submissions seeking new greenfield growth areas over and above shown in the spatial plan. Our officers are recommending that we don't pick that up, but there's a process outlined in the spatial plan for looking at how greenfield areas might be identified in the future, and that might be where this sort of thing you're talking about could sit, but we'll get some more advice from the officers. Great to meet you, and certainly you've got a fascinating job, including that lecturing at Lincoln. It's a fast-moving profession in this planning profession at the moment. So good luck with your experience and your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if I can just finish by saying, realise we're touching into a space that planning hasn't gone into for a long time, and happy to provide any further assistance that the panel or the officers might like.
Yes, I started under the town and country planning, so that was fun and centre in those days, but it's not anymore. Showing my age. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Martin, are you here? Here he is. Come forward, Martin. Welcome. You've got a presentation you've sent through, which looks quite interesting with some figures and things. So what we'll do is, we don't have a hard copy as a panel, but I think the team can put that up on the screen for us.
Not necessarily, I was just happy to speak to it, and then members of the panel can take it away and digest it.
Okay, but you do have some figures in that, can't you? Some of that, just, yeah, I'd like the panel to see those when you speak, so we'll just get that up thing. So, time is yours. Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Kia ora, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I'm a long-term resident of Waimakariri, former community board member, and we've had a long-term interest in planning in this area. Before I speak to the main points of my submission, there are a few matters in the officer's report that I wish to mention. Firstly, the areas to avoid appendix is an excellent example of how to do this exercise, but there are several submitters leading on about climate change hoaxes and that the East have been ignored. I'm of the view that this spatial plan should be the highest level document and feed into the regional policy statement and district council, the district plans of the three councils. I believe that it is appropriate that the spatial plan should provide guidance to the councils regarding a coordinated approach to managed retreat. Likewise, there are some that say that everything should wait for 30 years, especially the MRT. We've already procrastinated enough, and the longer we wait, the more expensive it will be, and it will be more difficult to purchase land for the MRT. While it will be necessary to phase the project, it is irresponsible not to provide the public with a full long-term plan for an MRT for the Greater Christchurch area. I'm sure you've heard this before, but Christchurch is one of the largest metropolitan areas in the southern hemisphere without an MRT. I recently had the pleasure of visiting the lovely city of Dijon, a city of 300,000 residents, which installed a new MRT in 2012. Within 2 months of the first tram line commencing operations, the most optimistic loadings of 36,000 passengers per day was exceeded by 6,000 passengers per day. They also designed the MRT routes to focus on students and young commuters, and this is an example that we should follow in the phasing of the implementation of an MRT in the Greater Christchurch area. Similarly, there are submitters opposing intensification along the proposed MRT routes, but the reality is that once an MRT is in place, intensification will happen anyway. However, I can understand their concern when looking at the quality of intensification development undertaken to date. Many of the inner city townhouse developments that have happened to date are absolutely appalling, and I'm therefore disappointed that the spatial plan has not given more guidance on design standards for the redevelopment of areas alongside the MRT routes. This should not be hard. A few hours online looking at some of the great, but not necessarily big cities of Europe shows how this can be done well. The MRT plan presented is insulting to the residents of the Greater Christchurch area, as the proposed MRT is shown is only one part of a bigger picture, in contrast to the 2021 interim report produced for this panel. This continues the trend of treating non-car users as second-class citizens. The quality of the transport hubs that have developed in recent years are an affront to bus users and hardly encourages increased patronage. The hospital super stop is an embarrassment, with elderly people having to cross a busy one-way street at some stage of their journey. The Northlands, Rickett and Eastgate hubs are equally uninspiring and outright dangerous, in contrast to the excellent central bus station and the Hornby hub facilities. Development of hubs as part of the MRT should be integrated into key shopping centres. Rangiora Co-op should have a smaller such hubs that are attractive to users and support key activities. As I mentioned earlier, the MRT interim report, attachment A, was very good, but on the view that the best MRT system for Christchurch, Greater Christchurch, should be a mix of rail, train and bus, which is extremely common overseas. The interim report looked at various options, one of which was to have a light rail system extending all the way to Wollaston and Rangiora. I believe that utilising the existing rail corridor to terminate various hubs where people can transfer is an appropriate solution for the Greater Christchurch area. I'm very disappointed the MRT plan does not include proposals for park and ride facilities. In overseas jurisdictions, the creation of park and ride facilities adjacent to the outer parts of the MRT routes has led to significant increases in the use of the public transport network and has been beneficial to businesses where park and ride facilities are located. The 2008 Parsons Brinkhoff report, Public Transport Futures, firmly recommended park and ride facilities and even provided a schedule of recommended locations. Research overseas has shown that park and ride should be provided at the following type of locations: at the outer edge of the network, so as not to increase congestion in the centre of the city, at suburban hubs to link to shuttle services to other hubs in residential areas. I've enclosed my suggestions on how such a system could operate, which is attachments B1 and B2 of my submission. I now wish to comment on the lack of credibility of the Waimakariri District Council housing capacity. The spatial plan notes that WDC states that there's capacity for almost 10,000 housing units between 2032 and 2052, without providing any evidence to support this contention. When I first read this comment, I made a request to the Waimakariri District Council for a copy of the modelling that had been undertaken. I enclosed a copy of the OIA request, attachment C1, that I made, but I'm still awaiting for the data. I encourage the panel to investigate this matter before finalising the plan. It's been evident for some time that the demand for land in Waimakariri is strong, and I do not disagree with the growth projections, but this spatial plan should identify those growth areas. I've asked WDC councillors and officers as to why the current district planning review does not include significant new growth areas, but I keep getting fobbed off that WDC must follow the RPS. The reality is that the RPS is out of date and completely inconsistent with the NPS for urban development. It is irresponsible that this spatial plan does not identify appropriate areas for future development in the Waimakariri district, for it is needed for the following reasons: to develop an efficient MRT, to develop a fit-for-purpose district plan, and to provide guidance to network utility operators to plan for the future. Unless a credible spatial plan is adopted, Waimakariri district will continue to develop along the lines of the Woody, Pegasus, Ravenswood conurbation, which is an example of the worst kind of urban planning seen in this part of New Zealand. So what does this mean for Waimakariri district? 10,000 housing units with a density of 10 units per hectare requires 1,000 hectares of land. And to show what this means, I've attached a drawing, attachment C2, that shows that almost the whole area between Woodend and Whenua, outside any areas to be avoided, attachment C3, that would be required to accommodate this many housing units. The proposed spatial plan has not gone far enough in identifying areas for future development in the Waimakariri district, and leaving this for a separate process is completely inappropriate. I'm at a loss as to why the Greater Christchurch Partnership has published such an uninspiring plan that does not truly identify the future long-term growth or propose a long-term MRT system that will give certainty to both businesses, residents, and how our community should develop in the future. In summary, the draft plan is underwhelming, lacking a genuine long-term vision, kicks the touch on so many fronts, and feels like the committee said, just put enough to show we did something. And it doesn't feel like the next step following the excellent MRT interim report of June 21, and does not provide a framework that can be used for the development of the next Canterbury Regional Policy Statement. I'm sure that many of the professionals who contributed to the project will be very disappointed with this draft plan. The draft plan is a poor outcome, despite the excellent supporting documents and the professional way in which engagement with the community was undertaken. I urge the panel to correct this glaring omissions and issue a plan that is of real use to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. We're looking at the figures now. I wouldn't mind if you could just go through them one by one and show them on the screen and just explain A1. So we're looking at A1 at the moment.
That was an appendix in the 2021 interim MRT report.
Yes.
And it showed the possible routes. So it was far more reaching than what's enclosed in the MRT part of the plan that has gone out recently.
But that includes use of the current heavy rail network for some of the routes, is that right?
Some of the options did, right?
Yes.
But I believe they should go a little bit further than what was shown there.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I was wanting to know what, yeah. Just for clarification, what year, sorry, was it?
The 2021 interim report, completed by WSP, was an excellent.
Okay, so the next figure. That's one of the, yes,
My suggestion on how the existing heavy rail route could be used.
so this is your idea here.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
And the next slide shows a more detail of the main part of Christchurch City, showing both the heavy rail routes and the suggested routes for a light rail system.
So these are the suggested routes in the spatial plan as we have them now, or they're extended?
The existing spatial plan only shows probably about 15% of that,
Okay,
which is effectively from Papanui through to Hornby.
Hornby, that's right, yes. Okay, and the next,
It's just a copy of my letter.
oh, the letter, okay,
Request.
yes, yes. And
This is a cut from the plan showing the areas to avoid in the Waimakariri district part.
yes,
I think that was an excellent index to the spatial plan.
yes. And the next one,
That shows 1,100 hectares, which is an area which avoids those areas shown on the previous plan, but provides enough space for 30 years of urban development in the Waimakariri district, taking into account that within that area there would be a need for some major roading networks and also some major recreation facilities.
so this area is not shown on the spatial plan, this is.
No. And that's really what I wanted to make, is that I believe that the spatial plan should show future development areas, and that would enable the Waimakariri district to develop appropriate ODPs, but like the ones that are already developed for Christchurch City. I'm not that familiar with Selwyn, but it really should be part of this plan and also the next iteration of the RTS.
Thank you for going through that. I'll see for the questions. Kate.
Yes, thank you. Question and clarification about the 1,100 hectares. You've mentioned that and you've helpfully put it on the map, but I understood from your presentation that you don't think that is the right way to develop. I wonder if you could elaborate on that, please.
I do. I think it's important to identify the gross areas for development, and based on the investigations that have been completed to date, it would then be up to the district council to take that the next step, develop ODPs.
Okay, so trying to understand my own benefit. So you think that this area should be identified both in the district plan and in the spatial plan?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, right. Yes, thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Mark. Just looking at this outline here that you've got, but under map 2 and map 14, it shows an area hatched in green of the areas of development that are possible now under the regional policy statement revised chapter 6, which was approved last year or the year before, I think. So in a large proportion of that area between Rangiora and Woodend is also under development now. And presumably that development that's underway now is part of your suggested calculations. Is that right?
No, it's not. The development areas that we're talking about, which are included in the RPS, are to the west of that area. And I don't disagree with the council's suggestion that there is enough land, zoned land, including that land for the next 10 years. It's the next 20-year period which concerns me, and we have an obligation, I believe, under legislation to show the 30-year horizon, not just a 10-year one.
Yeah, I'm just, you say the area is to the west of your map there?
Yes, the area which is shown green in the east part of Rangiora, which is currently developing, is not on that drawing. This is an area to the east of the golf course.
I'm kind of, the current development is along the Rangiora Wood End Road. On the east of Rangiora Wood End Road, isn't it? And comes down to virtually near Golf Links Road. So that's the area included in your map there, isn't it?
No, it's the drawing up on the screen that excludes that area which is currently under development.
Robbie, you have a question?
Very, very brief. Mark, you're aware of the flood mapping?
Yes.
Questions, team? Grant's still looking perplexed.
No more questions. It's just clarification, but once we get that information.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Martin.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. So that's actually the end of our speakers or some submitters in this session. So we'll adjourn for the morning and reconvene at 1 p.m. Sorry, is it 1 p.m. or 1 p.m. at Christchurch City Council chambers. Thank you, everyone.